Awesome. Looks like we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to the weekly Facebook Lives. What we're calling this? Carpe Diem moments or Carpe Diem time with Jesse or something like that. We still got to get that solidified and decided on and send it off and sign, seal, and whatever it is. So if you have suggestions, I can't remember even what it was. But anyways, first of all, I want to apologize for not being on here on Friday and yesterday. I overexerted my vocal cords last week. And I didn't realize you could do that. Well, I knew you could wear your voice down and everything, but I didn't know you could actually do what I did. And what ended up happening is I started to get this, when you go to breathe in and it feels almost like that icy feeling on your lungs, like it's really windy or something like that. And you breathe in, the air kind of tickles your throat. I felt like that. And then I had my throat felt not sore, but it felt, what's the word I'm trying to look for? It felt rough. Like it was like it had been worn down. So it felt almost calloused or something like that. And I started to do some research on it, because then what I noticed too is that if I were to extend, oops, shoot, I almost just knocked my microphone off. If I were to extend my neck like this, when I do it, I get this tickling feeling in my throat. And I was trying to work out the other day and trying to do squats. And so if you put a bar on your back when you do a squat, and you arch up like that, you really elongate your spine. Well, effectively what would happen is I'd go down into my squat and it would feel like I couldn't breathe during it. It was really, really bizarre. So I started doing a little research on it, and what it looked like is that I had strained my vocal cords. So how do you strain your vocal cords, you might ask? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of ways to do it, but the way I did it was so being a speaker and doing a lot of what I do to earn a living with my voice, I always in the morning, well, typically I shouldn't say I always, but for the most part, I always do a vocal warm up first thing in the morning, which is some vocal warm up I learned from a vocal coach. And then I always stay really well hydrated. I had about 3 days last week where I scheduled myself improperly, and I just launched into literally talking all day for, I don't even know, for the better part of the day. And just talking for probably 8 or 10 hours. And then on top of that, I was doing my TEDx rehearsals, which is another hour of speaking on top of that. And I had the brilliant idea one day to go down to the ocean and rehearse from there, but try to project my voice over the ocean, which if you haven't warmed up for that and you haven't trained for that, I would highly not recommend doing it. Anyways, to make a long story short, I end up with the hoarseness, tickling, all those types of things, which is why we didn't have Facebook Live on Friday and Monday. I still have a little bit today. I'm still recovering, but I'm going to keep this really short and sweet because I want to make sure we dive into, did this one just, okay. I just want to make sure we dive into today's message. And I see that this one keeps freezing. I don't know what the hell's going on here. I'll make sure we dive into today's message. Let me, hold on just 1 second. We're having technical difficulties with the one Facebook Live. I don't know why I just did that. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. It looks like it just kicked us out of the one. Okay. It kicked me out of one of my Facebook windows, but not the other one. Anyways, in the interest of time, I want to dive into today's message and today's story, which is about honesty being the best policy. Now, we've all heard that honesty is the best policy adage before. I'm going to give a little twist on it as to why, and then just do a brief little debriefing afterwards. And then I'm going to let you all go, and then I'm going to go back to hydrating and resting. And hopefully we'll be back to normal by Thursday. Anyways, honesty is the best policy. And I apologize for kicking everybody out. I don't know what the hell is going on with this Facebook Live. But here's the story. Check this out. And stop me if you heard this one, but really don't stop me because I want you to enjoy it. Once upon a time, there was about 4 or 5 college students who, the night before a test, they were doing what college students will sometimes do. They were partying their asses off. And they were having a rip-roaring of a good time, drinking too much, doing all those types of things, and stayed up to all hours, didn't study at all for the test. And it gets to be time where they have to show up at school and take the test. So they say, we're screwed. There's no way we're going to pass this. So they concoct an idea. They say, aha, what are we going to do? The only thing that makes sense, we got to lie. We got to create a story to justify this. So they come up with this idea that they're going to tell a story about their car breaking down. But now they were smart enough to say, well, we can't just tell a story. We really need to sell the story. So they put grease and dirt all over themselves to make it look like it. And they showed up at the dean's office. The 4 or 5 of them did. And they started explaining their story to the dean about how they were on the way back from the library and the car broke down and the tire went flat. And so they had to, because the tire was flat and there was no cell phone service, there was no tow truck around, they had to push the 5 of them, the car, all the way back to campus. And it took them hours and hours and hours, and they didn't get to study and they were exhausted. And is there any way the dean will show them mercy and let them reschedule? The dean was very thoughtful about this, and she kind of thought, and she empathized with where they were coming from. And so she said, I have an idea. I'll let you retake the test, and I'll give you 3 days to study, so that way you can be completely caught up on everything, and then we'll reconvene then. The students were ecstatic. They thought that was overly fair, and they thanked the dean and left. 3 days later, and they all show up to take the test, and the dean says, okay, here's the deal. Everybody's going to be in a different room, which the students were totally fine with because they prepared. They had 3 extra days to study. They studied their butts off. They knew the material front and back. And the dean passed out had other proctors in the different rooms. And so when there's test time, they passed out the test. Now, this was a different test than these students were expecting because there's only 2 questions on the test. The 2 questions were, for 100 points, the test was a 100-point test too. For 1 point, what's your name? And for 99 points, what tire was flat? 4 multiple choices: front left, front right, rear left, rear right. You can imagine what happened then. Law of averages, right? One student passes, the other students don't do too well, but because the other students don't do too well, the one that passed clearly just had a lucky guess, and then even then they all end up looking like they all failed because everybody had different wrong answers. So the moral of the story is this, right? Honesty is the best policy. Now, we all know that. We've all heard it, but we all know, too, that any of us who have ever been confronted with tough and challenging situations, especially when it comes to our relationships, when it comes to our friends, when it comes to our families, that sometimes being honest is easier said than done. I would be lying if I sat here in front of you all and said I had not told a white lie or just a normal colored lie or 2 in my day to try to save myself face or save myself from hurting someone else. But what ends up happening? To lie, and all whatnot. What I encourage you all to do is this, and take this from the story, is if more than anything, lying, I think, adds a level of complexity to life that life doesn't necessarily need. And I find that most people thrive, are the most successful, the most happy, and the most fulfilled when things are simplified. It is simplified to just be truthful. It is simplified to it's easier to say, I really screwed up, I partied, and not have to worry about the repercussions than trying to compensate. Because the reality is this: if the students would have just shown up and said, maybe the dean would have understood, maybe they wouldn't have. Who knows? But at the very least, they would have lost 3 more days of their life studying and then ended up failing the test anyways. And most of our lives, think about what our lies will mean to us, or our misdirections from honesty. They leave us to feeling probably not the best about ourselves. And most of the time, they ultimately are costing us more time, energy, money, resources, the important stuff of life, love. And they just make life a hell of a lot more complex because now you find yourself in a position where you have to keep remembering different versions of different stories and so on and so forth. So the bigger takeaway from this is if you want to simplify your life, if you want to add more love, more joy, more happiness, more fulfillment to it, really look at the honesty path. And sometimes honesty is going to mean that we have to have tough conversations with people we care about most. You can have those tough conversations, but if you do it from a place of love, not of a place of right or wrong or anything else, but you really check in and say, I know from my heart I'm doing this from a place of love. Those messages are often much more well received than a white lie to try to save face. I hope this is helpful for you all. I'm going to click over and just say hi to a couple people really quick. And Linda, good to see you on here. Jamie, Christina, Carol, Heidi, Beverly, Anita, Kimberly, Sylvia, Daniela, Michael, David, Jackie, Pure Love, Stacy, Trisila. It's great to see all of you on here. Tamara, I appreciate each and every one of you being here. I appreciate you giving me an excuse from the Friday and Monday Facebook Lives. I'll be back here tomorrow right around the same time. And then Thursday, it might be a little modified. I have some travel I have to do. Friday, I will try to hop on, but it would be earlier in the day as I have a all-day meeting Friday afternoon for TEDx. But otherwise, that's kind of the schedule this week. I hope that you all are doing well. I hope that you all are living an extraordinary day to day. And wherever you are, whether it's morning, noon, or night, remember Carpe Diem, seize the day, seize the moment, make this moment amazing. Use it as a foundation, as a springboard, as a catapult to launch you into the next moment and make it even more extraordinary. We'll see you next time, everyone. Send lots of love your way. Bye-bye. Maria, good to see you on here from the UK. Thanks for joining in.